Decent work means for me something that's very meaningful, that involves a fair income and also provides opportunities for my personal and professional growth, and also access to benefits and protection of my rights.
It's not simply about rights, it's about a work environment that enables people to flourish, develop, and contribute to community.
It provides meaning and purpose in terms of your life, at least in terms of our sector. But it also pays, it's something that provides you with the material benefits and working conditions that one needs to be able to have a good life-work balance.
Ontario's nonprofit sector employs over 1 million full-time and part-time workers across the province, but there's growing evidence to support that the good works that our sector does doesn't necessarily create decent work for people in our communities.
I think there's a historical undervaluing of our sector, which I think positions some of the most vulnerable workers in our sector worse off than maybe other workers in other sectors.
Every year, because of funding issues, we are not guaranteed of our contract.
So we're known as a sector that doesn't pay as well and that doesn't provide some of those benefits that people expect. So it creates a lot of instability and inequity, and ultimately it doesn't create a stable workforce for us to do this really important work that we do in communities.
I think there's a huge opportunity for the nonprofit sector to act as a champion of decent work. It's a cross-cutting issue that touches on many of the systemic issues that are facing the sector. And at the same time, there's another dimension where, for many organizations, mission and values align.
And the nonprofit sector is a key piece of the labor market, and they're also an employer. So they can actually lead the way in demonstrating what could decent work look like, what can employers do to anchor a decent work agenda, and what choices can they make that would be in the direction of decent work as opposed to more and more precarious work.
Change Work is about discovering and profiling decent work practices in the nonprofit sector and finding models and showcasing and amplifying them to other organizations.
Toronto Neighbourhood Centres are one piece of the 3 partners with the Ontario Nonprofit Network and with Moet Not-for-Profit. And our particular role as a network of multi-service community service agencies in Toronto is just to be a bit of a test case for what's going on in terms of decent work issues in the sector.
So I think the vision of Change Work is we're really trying to start a conversation within the sector about what role can nonprofits play in promoting this idea, because I think it's one that many people care about, especially those working in the sector.
To create a decent work movement within and across the nonprofit sector, we'll need a culture shift.
Funders can support decent work by funding programs instead of projects.
Nonprofits have to appreciate their political and economic strength. But I think we actually have to work with different levels of government differently.
So I think ultimately we'd be stronger if we had a common framework for applying employment standards.
Another level of success would be if the nonprofits with ONN, individually in their networks and together with ONN, would also start championing the kinds of labor market reforms that are needed for the labor market as a whole, because we're not going to be able to push just the best things forward in the nonprofit sector without also having some decent changes in regulations and things like minimum wage and the labor standards as they exist now in our province.
I think Ontario's nonprofit sector can really play a strong advocacy role in terms of moving forward an agenda that supports decent work, and also work to promote the voluntary sector as a whole as a really strong employer and contributor to the Canadian economy.